This is something that's coming. We know what's going to happen. The county is in charge of the project. We need to be a good partner with the county to make certain that we do the right thing for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Santamaro, you'll go first on this next question. What are your views on providing affordable housing on the island, on balancing the affordable housing with development? Should there be subsidies for affordable housing available to support critical workforces such as teachers, law enforcement, and hospitality workers?
I'm in favor of a local housing trust in association with the Habitat with Humanity. That is true affordable housing. There is no such thing as affordable rentals because state law prohibits or preempts any rent controls. The idea of a regional housing trust fund has never happened before in the United States. It's being promoted by the Island Packet as affordable housing, but that's dishonest. As I said, South Carolina law preempts any controls on rents, so affordable rents conceptually does not exist. This promotion of regional housing trust fund is just another racket for greedy developers, promoted and pushed in the editorial section of the Island Packet. And it's being dishonest to its readers because, again, there's no law to protect the tenant from rent increases. We have to change state law before we can build affordable rentals. Now, workforce or corporate housing is a no-brainer, and it's the only truly affordable housing option and path to take. Now, I did that for 22 years in Manhattan. I owned a company called Roommate Finders. And we need workforce housing. There's no question about it. It's also called corporate housing or roommate housing. Now, the only subsidy I would agree to for workforce housing is to donate public land. And the companies involved will be in control of those units or those workforce housing units. I don't agree with donating public land to wealthy developers who are not going to be able to build affordable housing, or affordable rentals, I should say, because there's no guarantee. It's subjective what affordable is.
Mr. Perry.
Yeah, so obviously this is one of the hottest topics that we have right now. And it's an issue that doesn't just affect Hilton Head Island. It affects a lot of resorts up and down the coast and in various resorts around the country. Our infrastructure of employees has to be addressed. And that infrastructure includes housing. Whether it's a $1 million additional to our taxes, which equates to $18.56 on average per household, which equates to roughly $1 million a year to help subsidize, to help with infrastructure costs, to help bond out for a $20 million value. This is an item to help fund the trust, the housing trust. I am in favor of that. I'm in favor of being a part of the regional housing trust with Beaufort County. We also need to make certain that we are working publicly and privately with different groups out there. Private partnerships. There's a group now that's trying to do something on the island. It requires an LMO change. We've got to take a look at that. We've got to think outside of the box because our future depends upon those employees being able to live here and work here. No, not every employee needs to live on Hilton Head, and not every employee wants to work or wants to live here. They want to work here. They want to be able to come here on a daily basis and have this. We want to have those employees part of the community because that makes a complete community. I'm calling it Islander housing because it covers a range from those that make $25,000, $30,000 up to $80,000 a year. We need to be complete in what we offer and how we do it. And the North Point tract that's going on the north end of the island next to the post office is a perfect example of a public-private partnership. And if we do it right, we can be a model for other areas. Thank you.
Ms. Orszak, would you like me to repeat the question? Okay.
Please.
What are your views on providing affordable housing on the island, on balancing the affordable housing with development? Should there be subsidies for affordable housing available to support critical workforces such as teachers, law enforcement, and hospitality workers?
Yes, some of this has already been touched on by the other candidates. What we have in place already, we developed a development with Habitat for Humanity. We evidently some years ago either donated or swapped a parcel of land that they're developing. Those partnerships are valuable to help secure some solutions. The North Point solution is going to be our model. If we hope to bring in additional private investors through public-private partnerships, they're going to be looking at how successfully we implement that particular housing, multi-family housing there. Funding sources, we could look, I suppose we could look at a mill increase. We have TIF revenues we can look at. The Regional Housing Trust is something that the Town Council has just committed to participating in. We could also look at a local housing trust in addition to that. And of course, private investment. I think ultimately our solutions will be a patchwork approach across the island. A lot of our private sector are developing their own workforce housing, for example, Sea Pines Resort and some others. So I think between the initiatives the town is putting forward and some of our private partners here on the island, we'll be able to provide some resources. There was a study that the town implemented in 2018, which looked at how much housing we would really need. And I'm not sure if that study is obsolete now, whether we would need to implement a new one going forward.
Thank you. For the next question, Mr. Perry, I'll go to you first. What are your views regarding the proposed $75 to $100 million investment for the Mid-Island Park? Should a Parks Department be created to oversee this level of investment and to support the needed renovation of the town's baseball, soccer, and other sports fields, which include Barker Field, Crossings Park, Chaplin Park?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the latter of that.
All right.
The parks that are in existence now have already been earmarked to be remodeled to meet current standards. That's already in place, and I support that. The Mid-Island Tract is a bigger part of redevelopment of that whole area. The price tag, yeah, it's absolutely huge. I'm not certain that I agree with the exact way that it's been outlined from the MKSK and how it needs to move forward. I've got some questions regarding that. I think that it can be a huge economic driver or provider for redevelopment in that area of Port Royal, Northridge. We've got a lot of empty commercial area in that spot. It's an opportunity zone. We need to take advantage of what we have and make certain that we utilize it to help us redevelop. And when we redevelop, some of that property can be utilized for potential workforce or employee housing. I'm not sold 110% on that full project scope. I need to learn more about it. I need to talk to more folks about it. I think overall it is a great place. We need to back to nature. It can help with stormwater runoff. It is our land, and we need to make certain that it represents our community. Spending $70 million on it, I'm not sold. I know that we can do a TIF district out there to help pay for it. I need to learn more about that. I'm not certain that every element that's been proposed for the park is necessary. I think that once it comes before us on council, we will address it and come back with different options. It is a beautiful piece, and we need to make certain that we do it right, not only for the community at large, but for our residents and for the redevelopment of that area. Thank you.
Ms. Orshak,
Would you repeat the question, please?
what are your views regarding the proposed $75 to $100 million investment for the Mid-Island Park? Should a Parks Department be created to oversee this level of investment and to support the needed renovation of the town's baseball, soccer, and other sports fields? Barker Field, Crossings Park, Chaplin Park.
Well, of course, we already have a Parks and Rec board or commission that oversees this. It is a costly venture. It is $70 million for the entire plan that MKSK has presented to Town Council. Phase 1, which Council is slated to vote on by November 1, prepares a lot of the land, basically, just to simplify what that particular phase will do. I think we're going to see it roll out in various phases over the years, so we have to look at that. Now, the town has a strategic action plan that it developed, and it has very specific targets and projects slated coming up. And if you look at our strategic action plan on our town website, for Parks and Recreation, there are 3 key areas that they'll be looking at. Starting back in 2021, they established the Parks and Recreation Marketing Plan. Back in 2021, they assisted with the Ford Shellring Park development. And slated for 2023, we're looking at the town establishing Beaufort County and Hilton Head Island Land Trust North Ridge Conservation Track Partnership. So that's what's currently in place and what the town council is focused on at this time.
Mr. Santamaro?
Well, not to overlap their answers, in answer to your question, a Parks Department, a Parks Commissioner, I'm open to it, but, the town manager has a staff of hundreds of people, so it's up to him if he thinks there's a need for a park commissioner, and we can vote on that. There was a recent report in 2019 that shows operations and capital for local parks generates more than $218 billion in economic activity and supports 1.1 million jobs. So having parks and trails also increase the value of our residential homes. And having a park prevents flooding, improves the quality of the air we breathe, and it provides a place for children and families to connect with nature. I think it's a win-win project to have, and I would embrace the mandate that this island has, is to stay green.
Thank you very much. Question 5, what actions would you recommend? This is directed first to Ms. Orszak. What actions would you recommend to preserve the natural environment and natural resources of the island?
Well, first of all, I've always supported our green space initiatives that have come forward, and I intend to vote in support of that come November. I think we need to take a close look at our land management ordinance as a council. I think we need to study what's in place and what may or may not need changes going forward, and that's going to take a good bit of effort by all new council members coming on board.
Mr. Perry.
Oh. So, as Ms. Orszak said, the Alamo served us well 10 years ago, but I don't think it's servicing us well today. We need to take a look at it. Our environment, our ecology, our ecosystem, everything is what brought us here. What keeps us here is our infrastructure, the stormwater drainage. So we've got to look at these things and make certain that we can protect, one, our residencies, our businesses. We also need to make certain that we're not overbuilding and not having enough pervious areas. So as we look forward to changing the LMO, we've got to make certain that clear cutting is removed. We can't do that anymore. A developer wants to come in and cut everything down because it saves them money. Well, they make more money off of it. That's not in the best interest of our character. So as we go forward with addressing the LMO, addressing the environment and how it all works together, it's about maintaining our character as an island and what we are and what we have been for the past 50 plus years. The environment's first. People ask me what comes first, the residents, tourists, what? The island comes first, the island itself. After that, it's the residents. and then everything else comes in. If we don't take care of our island and our land, then we don't have anything left to be here for. Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree with both of my opponents, and just to add other things to what they said, I think we should maintain the status quo on the darkness of the island for the turtles and the alligators and the nature and the animal kingdom out there that need to be in the dark. And, basically, I agree with both my opponents. There's nothing more to add, unless I can use my time about climate change. Is that another question, or can I use my time for that?
Well, we'll see how much time we have. Thank you. Ms. Orszak, did you do that one? Yes. Natural environment, okay. We have questions from the audience.
Okay.
Okay, the question is, who's going to go first on this one?
I went first or second on that last one. Joanne went first.
Okay. Mr. Santamaro, what is the purpose of the land management ordinance, and why is it being modified to increase density?
Well, the only modification I see that may happen, is happening and will happen, is workforce housing, because there's a need for it. But I don't think there's a need for, well, first of all, affordable rentals doesn't exist. It's not a real thing, and we definitely shouldn't develop affordable, what people are calling affordable rentals. But I do think we should increase density for affordable housing in a townhouse setting where we can work in association with somebody, or an organization like Habitat for Humanity, where working class families actually buy a home at market value with little or no money down, and the market value doesn't even matter because they have a 30-year mortgage that's interest-free. So I think that is true affordable housing. And we do need workforce housing. It will alleviate traffic, it'll help the environment, and it'll help maintain the island economy.
Thank you. Ms. Orszak, purpose of the LMO and why is it being modified to increase density?
I understand that the town council has tried to offer density bonuses, and evidently that was not fruitful. I can't speak to why the current council is increasing and made those changes. Again, a new council has to study what's in place, and it's well within our purview to make adjustments. And the mayor can lead that effort because the mayor controls the agenda, and we can put that forward and take a look at that a little more closely as a new council.
As chairman of the LMO committee, I can tell you that in the past year, we haven't discussed changing the LMO density. One of the thoughts I will tell you that is going around in discussions on LMO changes is the dilapidated and unutilized commercial buildings. So we've got properties that have been built that are empty. The LMO needs to be changed to address those buildings so that we can move forward with something there that makes sense for our community. Whether it is a walkable community with residential upstairs and commercial downstairs, whether it is taking existing commercial buildings and converting them to employee housing or some type of housing. So there are limitations within our LMO that keep us from some redevelopment items. That's what's being discussed. But again, as chairman of the LMO committee, we have not discussed the LMO changes in the past year.
May I ask a follow-up question?
You may.
Yes, to Mr. Perry. I wanted to take a look at the activities of the LMO committee, and it seems that the committee has only met once in this calendar year, and as such, there were no minutes for that meeting, and I don't see a second one scheduled yet. Is there a second one, a meeting schedule we can share with folks who might be interested in
Yeah.
attending?
So that's correct. There hasn't been any items to come before the LMO committee in the past 12 months. Why meet if there's not a need to meet? Yes, there is a meeting coming up. I believe there was supposed to be one October 4th, but it was canceled due to a health issue, and that is being rescheduled for, I believe, November 2nd or 4th.
Thank you. Ms. Orashak, what are your plans for drainage on the non-gated areas of Hilton Head Island? Assuming that you have plans.
Well, it would be disingenuous to say that I have separate plans. I'm one vote on a body of 7. It would have to be a collaborative look. And again, it goes back to the mayor putting these topics on agendas to move them forward. That could be a committee-assigned agenda topic where it's vetted and discussed and brought forward to the full council. But myself, I don't have any individual plans to resolve that, and that wouldn't be my role as an individual.
Thank you. Mr. Santamaro?
Well, the town manager addresses that issue, and building parks, future parks, will prevent flooding. And of course, the drainage issue is something that's always in constant mode that's being addressed by the town manager.
Thank you. Mr. Berry?
Yeah, so we're operating, the whole island is operating on an infrastructure that's roughly 60 years old. There is no difference between gated and non-gated areas. As a council, we take care of the island. So, as we come in, we are going to do some pretty things with the parks, yes. But we're going to do some not so pretty things, and that is addressing the infrastructure that is lacking. It's an investment of roughly $120+ million. That's based off 4 years ago. This is something I talked about 4 years ago when I ran for mayor. It's in the strategic plan now, and it has to be addressed in all areas of the island, especially as we go through and but take over roads and pave the dirt roads. We have got to have drainage everywhere. There are a lot of people that are not living in very nice areas because of lack of drainage. Now, we all know what happened last week, and we're fortunate that our drainage systems worked. We didn't have a whole lot of rain. Had we had a ton of rain, maybe it would not have been the same outcome. Matthew, we had issues with drains backing up. There's been a lot of work since then to make certain they've stayed clear and that they work properly. But as we go forward, we've got to pay attention to those items that are not necessarily pretty, and that one item is drainage. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Santamaro, do you favor establishment of a police department? Is there already an established need? What about just working better with the sheriff's department to address perceived needs?
Yes, I would go with the latter. I think we should beef up law enforcement funds for the sheriff department here. We don't need a police department. There's no need for it. We already have a sheriff's department. But they are understaffed and underfunded. And I would allocate at least $500,000, preferably $1 million additional per year to hire more sheriffs. There's also crime on the island that doesn't get reported. I don't live in a gated community. I only live what we used to call a plantation. So I live off plantation or outside of a gated community, and I talk to a lot of restaurant workers. And they tell me there's crime they see all the time that doesn't get reported, or nobody even bothers to call. They just figure, what's the point? Yes, but I don't think we need to have a police department. We should beef up what we have now, and I think we should increase it by $1 million a year for the sheriff department.
Ms. Orashak?
There have been some community members who have come forward at town council meetings that have expressed an interest. I'm not sure how large that voice is that would like to see our own police department. I would support a study if there was enough interest bubbling up. But beyond that, I think it would be a very costly service to add to our town. So without a study and really understanding what would be involved, at this time, I would say no.
Mr. Perry?
Thank you. Currently, I do not think we need our own police force. With the hiring of Bob Bromage and creating a new department on the island or the town, that gives us a better liaison and communication with the sheriff's office. We've got to let that work and see how things transfer thereon. Going forward, if we're not able to get the proper service, then I think we have to do a real hard study on the relationship with the sheriff's office and work to make it better. The cost to implement a police department will take away from greater things that this island is trying to do. An initial cost, roughly $12 to $15 million, operational cost of around $9 to $10 million, plus the liability side of it. There's a big expenditure in creating our own police force. The one future concern that I have is what's going on within the gated communities, in that what is their forces doing? Are they staying at current capacity? Are they reducing? Are they being affected by insurance? Are they still carrying guns? Do they still have the same authority? I've heard stories that some of these communities are now becoming greeters more so than enforcers. That is a concern. I still do not believe in a police force. I think it is too costly for our island. But I think we have to maintain and build a better relationship with the sheriff's office, because they already are receiving tax dollars from us. And then they're trying to get additional funds from us. So as we pay our tax dollars, we need to have appropriate coverage and make certain that we're getting our fair share. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I have a follow-up comment?
Well, I've had an objection to that.
Oh, that's fine.
sorry.
No, that's fine.
All right, we are at you anyway, Ms. Orszak. What is your position on reusing existing empty businesses versus building new ones?
I prefer the former as opposed to the latter.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Santamaro?
Well, if you're talking about gutting out the present buildings and building residential housing.
Doing something else with them,
something
right.
Well, we can do, there's a lot we can do with those empty buildings. We can be expanding our arts, music scene, using those buildings. Of course, we can convert them into workforce housing. You know, to touch on using those abandoned buildings for art and music and working with the Arts Center, I wish the Island Packet would promote more of our cultural heritage of this island, the arts and the music. Instead, they like to report, you know, snake bites that a hiker had in Colorado. There's not enough coverage for the arts, and I think we can use the arts for those empty buildings. Just like New York is the art capital of the world, we can be a satellite of that.
Mr. Perry?
Yeah, so this goes back to the LMO question. How do we adjust the LMO to make certain that we're not building on treed land, that we're taking advantage of existing buildings and rehabbing them, reshaping them to meet the current needs? So absolutely, I mean, if we can ever keep another building from being built, definitely. We all know that as a community, we're losing businesses to off-island. The big box stores are hitting out there and people are going out there to buy. So the need for different retail shops is not as great as it used to be. So we've got to take a look at everything that we have inventoried that is wide open not providing really any revenue to the town, to the community, or any services. It looks blighted. And it goes back to the master plan that is being proposed for the Mid-Island area of Port Royal Plaza, Northridge. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know about some of these questions.
Okay. I don't either yet.
Well, yeah, I don't know how I do. I guess, let me ask, what is your position on workforce housing, starting with Mr. Santamaro?
Well, that is the only true path and the only true answer to affordable housing. As I said earlier, there's no such, conceptually, there's no such thing as affordable rentals unless we change the state law. And any candidate that tells you otherwise is being dishonest. A workforce housing, which is the same thing as calling it corporate housing, or roommate housing, which is what I did for 22 years in New York City, is the way to go. It's the only path, it's the only true path to affordable rentals or affordable housing.
Mr. Perry?
Certainly. So workforce housing is in multiple different areas, different views, whether it's Sea Pines building the nice building they build over off Pemmican Bay Road for their employees, whether it's Caligny Plaza building for their employees. There's somebody that's coming before a development team tomorrow with another proposal. Is it terminology? Is it workforce housing? Is it employee housing? Is it employment housing? Is it islander housing? I call it islander housing because it meets everybody's needs. Let's take a look at when Hilton Head was early developed. There was a lot of employee housing that was built. Lawton Woods, Bay Pines, Cordillo Cabanas, Holiday Homes, which is in Folly Field. This was all done as a employee housing area. So I think, when we talk about it comes out as workforce housing, it's more encompassing than that. It's housing for everyone. And there are people out there with different income ranges that cannot afford to stay here. People say, pay them more. Well, that's not our call. But if we can provide housing, if we can provide opportunities, whether through private opportunities or public-private opportunities, then we need to look at it and explore it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Orszak?
So the town council are not experts, and that's why we have developers who are responding to our North Point, and they're going to bring the ideas, they're going to generate solutions, and the current seated council will be privy to those, and they're going to narrow down those options for the new council members transitioning in. This question overlaps a little bit with the previous question. Housing has been the focus, but really, in reality, it's a multifaceted response. It's really not just housing. We also have to look at wages and transportation. It's a three-legged stool solution. But we have been focusing on the housing based on overwhelming public input coming before the council, and the council is responding in kind, and the new council will continue with those developments.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next question. Will you commit to denying any attempt at zoning that would increase the current density? Let's start with Mr. Perry.
I can't commit to that right now
Okay,
because it hasn't been proposed as to what we're talking about, what we're looking at. So not until something is brought forward, concrete in a presentation with all the information, I can't answer that question right now.
Sounds good. Okay. Ms. Orszag?
I actually would be willing to commit to that at this time, given the limited information that I have. And I generally don't make promises that I can't keep, nor do I believe we should create ordinances that we can't enforce.
Now, was the question to increase density?
Yeah, the question is, would you commit to denying any attempt at zoning that would increase current density?
Well, by default, if we're going to agree on workforce housing or corporate housing, whatever you want to call it, of course there will be an increase in density. But we could slow down the density level by aiming for replacement growth instead of just constant growth. Currently, we have 958 people per square mile, and the national average is 91, and during the high season, it swells to 3,600 people per square mile. And, China has like 330 people per square mile. We're overdeveloped. And the aim I have for our future agenda is to have intelligent growth, replacement growth, not just rapid growth where we don't even have enough housing for our workforce. But by default, it's disingenuous to say there won't be an increase in density if we're going to agree on workforce housing, or even if you want to call it affordable rentals.
Did I get you on this one? Okay.
You did?
The next one is, do you have a full-time job? If so, and if elected, will you quit your job to become a full-time mayor? We'll start with you, Mr. Perry.
Yeah, I do have a full-time job. And as mayor, I will be your mayor 100%. I am fortunate enough to have great flexibility within my work. And also my work allows me to stay in touch with the community, the business community. My office is right here. I'm not a rich person. I'm a caring person. I said it the other day, I'm a full-time dad. Just because I'm not with them doesn't make me not a full-time dad. Am I going to take a phone call at 7 o'clock on a Saturday? Yes. Am I working on stuff now for the community? Yes. So let's take a look at what our government is, what our structure is. It is a weak council, weak mayor, town manager. The town manager runs the town. A busybody can micromanage staff on a council basis. That's not what I'm about. I'm about letting the manager run the town and do his job. Council needs to set policy, get out of the way, and let things happen. Yes, we need to be certain that things are going properly. And as mayor, you will see me in the community. I am accessible. So I take offense to the question, do you have a full-time job? I'll be full-time mayor, 110%, and I'm going to do a damn good job at it too. Thank you.
Mr. Santamaro, do you have a full-time job?
No, and I don't believe a word Alan said. Our current mayor is a full-time mayor. Tom Clary, who's in the back there, he dropped out of the race because he works for the Pentagon. He realizes to run a $2 billion plus economy, you need to be at it full-time. And I'm not a full-time dad. I don't have a full-time job. I turned 63 in August. I've been retired since the age of 40. I did well with what's called here on the island workforce housing. That's what I did in Manhattan, another island. I dealt with workforce housing. I dealt with corporate housing, it's the same thing. It all has to do with roommates. And you just can't be the face of Hilton Head Island if you're not a full-time mayor.
Ms. Orszak.
So there's a reason why 3 out of the 4 candidates believe this is a full-time commitment. I am working for Low Country Inside Track, as I said in my introduction, but I will give up that position to serve as mayor. And let me just provide a few examples as to why that is of benefit to you and why that increases your representation. I would be able to, for example, not only attend all town council meetings and its standing committees, but I would also be able to attend all of our board and commission meetings, and there's quite a few, for 2 reasons. We appoint those people to those boards and commissions. The town council does. So I think it's important to see their performance and how they are acting in their role. It also gives the mayor an idea of how their recommendations are formed that come back to council. I see myself as a mayor who talks less and listens more. That will allow me full-time to have many, many meetings with constituents, either one-on-one or group gatherings, because I'm here to serve you. And that's the purpose of a full-time mayor, to be able to give as much of your time as possible. I have 3 children. I have a full life otherwise, and I'm willing to do this because I think that the job demands it.
Thank you. Mr. Santamaro, should there be a $15 per hour island-wide minimum wage?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would favor that, but I don't know if the township has that authority. I always thought it was a state level, so.
No.
Yeah, I mean, well, a good chunk of our island workforce work for the restaurant industry, and they do well. I mean, a lot of them make 60, 70, 80,000. I know the bartenders at the Tiki Bar, they work only 6 months out of the year, and they make 60, 70,000. They take off for the rest of the year. I think, except for a segment of the population that are underpaid, and that's where workforce housing comes in, it's very important. The house cleaners, the maids, the domestic workers, the janitors, they don't get paid enough. And while we're on that subject matter, the workforce housing is roommate sharing. So a lot of these people already have families and are married, so they're not necessarily going to be able to utilize the workforce housing unless they allocate some units that the company controls just for family. But that's not the case at the moment. But yes, in a perfect world, I favor a $15 minimum wage, but unfortunately, we don't have that power. It's the state level.
Ms. Orszak?
As I mentioned earlier, I think our workforce shortage is not just due to housing, and that wages is a considerable piece of that. I would like to look into that further. I think that's a very interesting question. Whoever submitted that, thank you. Again, I'm like Michael, I'm not certain what our authority would be there, but if there's anything we can move there, I certainly would support that.
Mr. Perry?
Yeah, I agree on the legality side of that, but I also don't think it's the town's responsibility to set that at this point in time.
Thank you. Let's go with Ms. Orszak. I have to keep juggling this here. Do you intend to honor the stormwater management in place with many of the planned communities? You understand about the stormwater management agreements that are in place?
I don't have them in front of me, so I can't speak to the details of them, but yes, of course.
Thank you. Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Santamaro?
Well, I'm going to have the same answer as Alan, yes, but I have to confess, I don't know anything about it.
Okay, let's go now with Mr. Perry. Do you, where am I? Do you support the 1% sales tax referendum proposal, and why?
So I think we need to dive into which 1% sales tax referendum and what its purpose is.
I think she's talking about the green tax.
But
Okay.
I'm not assuming. We need to know which one we're talking
I
about.
don't know. I mean,
I think it's
If
the
it
green
is,
tax.
if it is the green space, if that's what the question is based off of, yes, I do support that. I think the more that we can buy up land and/or density off island, the better off we are. And just that alone, just to take off some of the future developments that's being proposed for not only Beaufort County, but Jasper County. And my understanding is that 1% tax can be utilized to purchase density and land in Jasper County and other counties. So yes, I support it.
thank you.
Yes, I support the green tax, or the green space tax. 75% of it will be paid by the tourists, so it's not really a burden on the local population. And it also embraces the mandate that we have to keep our island as green, or in this case, Beaufort County, as green as possible.
Thank you.
Yes, and to reiterate what I mentioned earlier, yes, I support the Green Space Initiative, and I've supported all prior ones as well, so thank you.
Well, I think it's time that we consider summing things up. So could I ask each of you to give us a 5 or 10-minute summing up of why you're running for this position and anything else we need to know about you and your plans. And I'll start with Ms. Orishak.
It doesn't have to be that long.
Okay.
Can I pull a book out and start reading?
Okay, thank you. I've been honored to live on Hilton Head Island for the past 20 years. My roots also run deep here, but we chose Hilton Head Island as adults, my husband and I, and we raised our 3 children here, and they came up through our island public schools and went on to be, well, they're scattered all over the United States and gainfully employed, thankfully. I'm asking for your vote on November 8th. You need someone in here who understands how to navigate on an elected body. And I have to tell you, 8 years serving on a school board is quite a testing ground. They are notoriously contentious, not only in South Carolina, but throughout the nation. So I've been vetted in that regard. The forms of government between the Beaufort County Board of Education and the town of Hilton Head Island are almost identical. It's the same clear separation of power between the council and their town manager. I understand that, and I respect that relationship. I will give 100% of my time with no distractions in this role. I'm studying. Prior to coming here tonight, I was knee-deep in our procurement document here for the town, which is riveting, I can tell you that. So there's a lot of reading, a lot of studying, a lot of meetings I'll be attending on your behalf. It's all on your behalf. I will work for you. Now, some of you have commented on my T-shirt this evening. How many of you in the room know Martha Baumberger? For the rest of you that were curious, Martha was the first and only woman mayor on Hilton Head Island, and I'm here to pay homage to her. She served honorably. She was a very talented individual. She actually served 3 terms on a school board, just as I have. And I would be very, very honored to follow Martha as your next and second woman mayor. And I hope that you'll consider me on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Santamaro, summing up.
Well, I just want you to know that I'm pretty direct. I do answer the questions. I keep it brief and right to the point. I don't answer with fluff. And that's the kind of mayor I would be. I've studied systems. I've studied systems with government programs. That's what I do. I'm sort of a geek about it. And I study what needs to be done on this island. Like, I think a lot about how we can utilize public transportation. And not that I haven't come up with a strong conviction of what we should do, but it's got to be something that has to be addressed on a county-wide basis. I know we're a car culture down here, but I think public transportation may have to be something that has to be expanded and dwelled on in the future years. And I do love this island. My roots here go back to the 1970s here on Hilton Head Island, and it's lost its rustic appeal, especially in the last 20 years. The developers sold us a vision which has now been not honored. It's basically been destroyed. The damage has already been done. There's nothing we can do about it. But at least we can put a moratorium on growth. In other words, I'm not, when I say stop the growth on the flyers that I have in the back of the room, it's just a platitude. It's obviously not going to be that absolute, but we should aim for replacement growth. We should have intelligent growth. And, there's a woman sitting in the media table there, but she doesn't work for the Island Packet. It's really amazing how the Island Packet has not covered any of the forums we've been having the last week or two. And there's not even the Buford TV station here tonight. That was a station out of Savannah. I actually think it's fixed. I think it's intentional that there's no media coverage for the mayoral campaign. And I think it's obvious who's going to get the endorsement. It's just unfortunate that there's not enough coverage locally so that the voter can make an intelligent decision.
Thank you. Mr. Perry.
Well, I just want to say, go for Michael for mayor of Hilton Head Island, and you can see more about me there on the Facebook page.
Thank you. Mr. Perry.
Yes, thank you. So I want to go back to the employment thing real quick, take a quick second there. Weston Newton, Bill Herb Curbsman, Senator Tom Davis, they all have full-time jobs. Look at the great things they've done for our community, especially Senator Tom Davis, how he has pulled town council and county council together. So at one point in time, I was donating roughly 1,000 hours a year to charity. I was on 6 different boards and committees. I was chair or president of all 6 of those at one time. As we go forward, you need somebody that understands the value of the community, that has been involved with the community on different levels. I attend council meetings. I attend planning commission meetings. I attend LMO committee meetings. I attend CIP meetings. I attend Gullah Geechee committee meetings. I don't get paid to attend these meetings. If I can't watch them in person, I can watch them online. Thank God we have that technology. A lot of the committee meetings are duplicates of other things that have been presented. So there's repetition in the information that's being put out there. So keep that in mind. It's called using your time wisely. Pardon? Oh, I thought somebody said something. Must be my
Yes,
shoulder talking to me.
right.
Going back to the stormwater issue and use of land, we've got to make certain that the Gullah community is able to utilize their properties as they need to use their properties. We need to make certain the historical representation of the Gullah community is pronounced on our island. The history that this community contains is unbelievable. The arts that this community contains is unbelievable. There was a group of artists back in the 60s that came to this island that helped make Island a great place. Joe Bowler, Murray Tinkelman, Kobe Whitmore, John Stobart, and many more. They helped put us on the map. That's knowledge. That's firsthand knowledge. I didn't go read this somewhere. I've lived it. What you get with me is somebody that's going to put it on the table.
And scare the rest of us.
That's right. That's what we did as a family in our family business. We put it on the table. There was nothing hidden. It's about the betterment of everybody. And I'm going to tell you, I said it earlier, I love this community. I used to pick potatoes out on Bagall. I used to play Gator football out on Bagall. I grew up here. I have given to this community. My family has given to this community. And as your mayor, I will continue to give over 100% to this community, the community that I love. Thank you.
I think we're going to cut it off now. The candidates are more than welcome to stay afterward. You can have your private discussions. I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight, and I'd like to thank the three candidates for their participation and their honest and thorough answers. So let's give them a I hope you found out more about the candidates and that you will go to November 8th and support the one that you like the best. Thank you, and thanks to Sally for monitoring.
The voters leave.
Okay, you're welcome.
Is the